Hey G, let's start the show.
Welcome to Questions and Alan with your host and mine, Alan Furstenberg.
Hey there, I'm Alan Furstenberg and I am here to help you with your questions about designing and developing for the Google Assistant. What's today's question, G?
What are the different responses or prompts available?
Well, we've got a lot of different choices and some of them depend on the exact platform that we're using. But the most basic, the most straightforward, and one that's available on all of the platforms is what we refer to as the simple responses. Now, these are going to work everywhere, on smart speakers, on smart displays, on your Android devices, all of the platforms where the Assistant is available. Others will only be limited, and we'll kind of talk about those as we go along. Got it?
How simple are we talking?
Well, each simple response actually has two parts to it. The first is what we refer to as the speech response, and this is, as it kind of implies, what we're going to hear. So on devices that have speakers, and that's almost all of them, the speech is where we're going to hear what's coming back from the agent, where we impart audibly what we want the user to know. Now, there's also an optional text part, and this text part doesn't have to be the same as the speech part, but it should be similar. In some cases, though, we might want to use the text part to show something visually. So we might say something, we want to be a little shorter when we say something, and expand upon it a little bit in the text part. One of the things to keep in mind is that we hear things differently than we read things. So we should make sure that we build these two separately, but they should impart the same information, basically. Of both of those, we have what we refer to as the first simple and the last simple part. The first simple part is usually what's going to be what imparts information, how we're replying directly to the last thing that the user said. And the last simple is going to be what we're prompting them to do next. So I like to think of it as the first simple kind of gives information, while the last simple asks for new information. The other thing that's useful to know is that for all of these parts, the speech, the text, and the first and last simple of each of those, we're allowed to have multiple variants of them. So since we tend to speak in different ways, depending on how we're talking, and since the user can get bored if they just hear the same robotic statement over and over again in the same kind of monotone, we like to vary it up. So we are allowed to provide multiple variants in all of that. Did I miss anything, G?
No, but that doesn't sound so simple.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, but the good news is you don't need to use them all at once. Usually when you're starting out, you're going to have one variant. It's going to be speech. You should probably pay attention to when you use the first simple response and the last simple response. But overall, you don't have to have this incredibly rich set of things. You can build up to that as we go along. So that's the good news. Okay?
Okay, but are there any ways to give users a choice? Like a menu?
Yeah, we've got several options here, and it depends on exactly what kind of choices and what kind of presentations you want. So the first is that we're able to provide suggestion chips. And these in some ways are quite literally what we are hoping, kind of nudging the user to say next. They direct the path that our conversation may take. Suggestion chips are exposed on more visual platforms like Smart Display or on Android devices. We also have things like lists and options. And these are better rather than directing a conversation, which is kind of more menu-like. Lists and options, more like they're returning search results or trying to narrow down what a user has said so that you're capturing from a range of things a set of things that they may choose from. So for example, if they ask to pick something about Alan and you've got multiple Alans, you may use a list or an option to narrow down which Alan they're talking about. Sound good?
How about presenting information?
Well, in the same way that lists and options can present information for them to choose, there are other kinds of things that we may want to just present as part of the result, as part of presenting them information that they'll want to know about. And these are normally done using cards. Cards can have text and titles and images and tables. We've got a small variety of things that we can put on cards that people will be able to quickly glance at and reference. And again, these are available on smart displays, on Android devices, and there are slightly different forms on each one. Additionally, we've got a very rich set of media responses. So, and the media response lets us play long form audio and let them control that audio using pause buttons and fast forward and skip ahead and go back. So all of that is covered with a media reply. And then finally, we've got the really, really rich immersive interactive canvas, which is very immersive, as I was saying. Immersive, interactive. I call it the IC, the interactive canvas. And this lets you use tools that web developers are already very familiar with. So HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all of them, run, and yet they can still interact with your action backend. So we still have a conversation, and it's important to note, conversation's still really at the heart of what we're doing with interactive canvas, but we can use HTML tools along with it. And that is really, really powerful in a lot of ways. That's a lot.
You're a bit light on details. Will you talk about how to make all these prompts?
Yep. All of the different kinds of prompts that we have, we're going to go into a lot more detail in other segments. But it's important that you know what options that we have out there. And most importantly, when you design and develop, start with those simple responses. Make sure you're developing a conversation with words, because that's the first tool that we have in an interactive conversational system. So we'll go into more detail, but until then, where can they find out more, G?
Same place it always is at https://developers.google.com/assistant. And you should say goodnight, Alan.
Good night, Alan.